Right, hi guys. Welcome to the Sunday International Bigfoot Workshop. I'm Dan B and I'm a recovered alcoholic. Very grateful one today. Sobriety date 1st of February 2021. This workshop is facilitated by myself today. The study relies on you listening, but please, I pray that you have your big book in hand and follow along with a pen, pencil or highlighter and make any notes. If you need to, write them down and I'll answer them at the end of the meeting. I will keep everyone muted during the workshop except for the facilitator. Any inappropriate behavior will not be tolerated and you'll be removed. This meeting is being recorded. The audio portion only is being recorded and only of the facilitators and will be shut down at the end of the meeting to preserve your anonymity. Hopefully you'll have a great meeting and understand something, I pray. And we will kick off with the lovely step 3 prayer found on page 63, so please join with me. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Thank you. Move that there. Oh, hey, Rob. Good to see you. Kemble's busy today. Right, so as I was saying, there's quite a lot of information that we can, it's almost, when I first sort of went through the big book, I was listening, but I didn't really sort of relate to until I started obviously going to book studies and things like that. But if you kind of look back to when you first started and read the book, if you've been in a few months and read through the step and gone through the steps and read, Bill's story is almost, for me, was the very first main share. I didn't realize at the time, but it's almost him discussing, and to be fair, I think that's what I've learned in terms of sharing when I've been asked to do shares. I struggle in meetings when the main share has done a pretty good drunkalogue. They give you a bit of experience, well, their experience of the past, but nothing of the future, and don't discuss, especially when, say, for example, in a certain step or a step 1 or whatever the meeting is, when they say that, specifically for the step, that the step they're discussing doesn't actually involve any text from the book. It's kind of like the slogan phrase concept. It's really not, they're not doing a bad job, but at the same time they're not doing the right one. So it's hard to explain without sounding like I'm bitching off to somebody. But at the same time, if you're carrying the message to somebody, all I actually want to do is relate to something that I'm talking to about the book, because that's how I got sober. That's how I stayed sober. It wasn't because, yes, there's a phrase that we use a lot. It says, listen to the similarities, not the differences. Well, that's, yes, I humbly take that on board. And if you've gone for a meeting purely to make yourself feel better, and you've heard some really bad shares, you're going to leave that meeting in worse a state than when you went there, because that meeting hasn't given you this amazing kind of uplifting feeling. So that little statement that we start when in the UK, I'm not sure if we do it across the pond, but it's just giving, especially the newcomer, a very little kind of nugget of information that they, even if they can relate to 3 words out of that main share, it might give them something that makes them want to stick around a little bit longer, to find somebody that can be a sponsor, find out, get the book, anything like that. I also mentioned, I've had to explain it a few times as main shares in the UK. I don't think it's as prevalent in terms of the word used. Is I introduce myself when secretary and stuff like that as, hi, I'm Dan, I'm a recovered alcoholic. Now you can see some of the people in the room kind of looking a bit cross-eyed when you sort of say that, but I don't do it for, it took me a while to actually come out in a sense and say that phrase, but it's not in any shape or form to be cocky, look where I am, look what I've done, how amazing am I. I was actually quite scared that if I came out and said recovered, then a week later I would fall into some kind of trap of not being a recovered alcoholic and drink and things like that. I say it because there's a lot of not happening in the rooms of giving that person who is either, well, we've had them in the meeting, the step one, they've been drunk, they've forgotten that they've been here, they've come again and not realized they came before, they were that inebriated. Newcomers of all ages. I would personally, when I came into the rooms online, would have loved to have heard somebody say something like that, because I want to know why I'm stopping drinking, but also to give me some encouragement, to know that there's a solution to the end of this. If I'm in day 1 or hour 22 of not drinking, I need to sort of see that there's a progression that's going to make me feel better. So I don't do it at all for myself when I introduce myself as recovered. It's for the newcomer and somebody who doesn't understand. And I love it if somebody asks me, how can you say that? Or why do you say that? Because it enables me to explain. And in a sense, it's quite sad that you do have to explain, because it means that that person hasn't read the book. I mean, it says it straight away at the beginning, doesn't it? So my premise into the AA process was, as I said, is online. I initiated with a few local meetings and really got on with them well. But again, in terms of the information that was given to me, even though I said I was new, these little groups had already popped up and created their own little local zones and timings and stuff, which they're on regularly. But as a newcomer, the first thing that I feel I should have been able to have understood is when they were talking about sponsorship, the book, the program, the steps. I had to find that out myself. And these were supposed to have been sort of, you know, recovered or recovering alcoholics. I mean, there's guys in this room here that are only 4 or 5 months sober that have gone through the book and actually looking at and doing, taking other alcoholics through the steps, not 3-4 years down the line. And I was struggling, obviously, to understand what all this was about. My first sponsor didn't explain that very well to me. I even got told off for wanting to rush through the steps. But I think I was probably quite, I think that was probably my personality as much as him. But at the same time, 3 months in, I think I felt I should have been in that position. But that's where the problem was. I think I was. Anyway, so I'm going to go back to what Kemble was originally wanting to potentially talk about today, was how all of this rambling that I'm doing and what it is all about today is in relation to your first 3 steps and how they are fundamentally important to not securing. I don't like the word work, because it's totally not. We take the steps, we don't work the steps. It's fundamental how looking at those steps and taking those steps, that it basically opens up this broad highway, as we talk about. But from looking at the steps and reading the steps ahead of you, you kind of I've got such a good grounding with those first three, as we talk about in other meetings, and Kemble has, Rob and Joe. It's very cleverly compacted into this concept of arch using architectural information, like the foundation stones. Things like that give us a good holding. So if you need to grasp at different sort of concepts as you progress through the steps, you can stumble, you can move around, but as long as you stay on focused is the program as it is, then you're not going to go anywhere to worry about. Now, going back to what I said before I started recording, is that I'm going to utilize Bill's story a little bit to show fundamentally how quick and how not complex, which I find I'm extremely easy at being able to do, is make things harder than what they're supposed to. I think it is Dr. Bob that says keep it simple. I think it was one of his last and what was the other one which on his death, one of his last chats with Bill before he died was don't louse this up. They must have been mad to be around. But anyway, within literally a couple of pages of Bill's story, his mate Ebby. Now, I'm presuming, can I just look at who's in the room? Everybody's been and understood the concept of what's happened at Bill's story. We've discussed this one on a couple of sessions before. If anybody's not used to it, Ebby T, who is part of a Christian-based group called the Oxford Group, is rescued from jail by a couple of his friends who are already there because of drink driving and things like that. And he's been sober for a couple of months, I believe. I'll get struck off if that's not right. Rob's going to, yeah, there we go. Now he goes over to see Bill, and then this is where I'm taking it up in terms of where, even though they weren't actually doing the steps because they didn't exist then, it is how his main share, almost, I'm going to call it a main share from Bill's story, takes us through the steps of what we're talking about through the whole rest of the program. Now, the very first part of his story, now, if you wanted to say, start at Bill's story from page 1 to 9, that's almost him writing down how unmanageable his life is. He's going through stuff. It's not the fact that he's drinking at that time and doing things, it's the amount of stuff that he is doing and what he's not doing correctly, the way he runs his life, the way he treats people, the way he looks at other companies and people that he works with, principles. His whole principles and manners about life are very self-centered. He's got resentments about other people earning money and more money than him and things like that. So this is where he sort of concept of the mix, when we also split up step 1, admitted to a powerless over alcohol, that our lives are unmanageable. It's not just the alcohol. The alcohol, yes, is a symptom of our malady, our problem mind, our disease, our obsession. But without the alcohol progressively getting worse, obviously then things take a different step. So jumping on to page 12 now. I don't know who, if people are relatively new to the book, but back when this was first printed back in 1939, you'd have had to pay quite a bit extra to have certain words edited or changed within the print. It's not like today's digital printing or anything. So on a page, if you wanted something in italics, that would be more expensive for you to do. When I see that within the book, it's telling me something that I really need to look at. I know that the rest is, but it's a very important fact that they're trying to push across, or just to make you think about the rest. It can make you think about the rest of the page. But if we drop down to say, I think this is, you sort of like, you could be sort of, it doesn't say this on here, but at the same time, it's how it's relating. This is what I'm talking about, the steps. Perhaps your step 3, if I'll get that back up in a minute, page 63. Sorry, page 12, in italics. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. Then it stops on the italics. I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. Now, Bill is talking about how uplifting his friend is towards him. He doesn't stay sober on that session, or that information alone. So again, it shows you how strong the malady and the alcohol pull is. Even though he's suddenly got this inspirational thought, it's not stopping him from drink. So that's on page, what I just said there, middle of page 12. And as I start with the step 3 prayer on page 63, we are now at step 3. It's the second full paragraph. Many of us said to our Maker, as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. So even within half of his session on the book that he's talking about, his own story, he's letting us into the information that we need to understand. It's almost like a prelude. Okay, so we're jumping on page 13. It's the first full paragraph. At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremors. Luckily, in those days, you got through to a hospital. I had my delirium tremors probably in my little cabin that I was doing my Zoom rooms in at the time. My little shed in the garage. There I humbly offered myself to God, as I then understood him. So in relation to that, how does that feel to you? Step 2. So if I jump to, what am I looking at here? Trying to see if I can find 44. I'm sure there's something that relates. Bear with. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. So it's letting you know, obviously, on that session there, that relate that back to 24, which I was talking about. See, I'm not as good as this Joe, it's mixing back and forth. They speak about the pages as if they're quickest bullets. So he's in the hospital, understanding that he's licked, he can't carry on, and he's powerless in terms of his own power. So this time round, this is, I think, Rob, 4th time in hospital. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're on about treatment centers and stuff now, 2 or 3 times in and out. But I mean, this guy's in for the 4th time. It's on this 4th time, he's not talking about himself getting himself fixed. Ah, cool. Excellent. He's admitting now that he needs help. Human power is not enough. There I humbly offered myself to God, as I then I understood him, to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my new friend take them away, root and branch. I have not had a drink since. Literally in that one paragraph, we've got 2, 3. He's ruthlessly admitting his problems, which is step 4, and 5 to a friend. My schoolmate had visited me, and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. We made a list, step 4, of people I'd hurt or towards whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to right all such matters to the utmost of my ability. I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. So, literally within those 2.5 paragraphs, we are now in the realms of his step 9, aren't we? Because he's admitted he's needing a power greater than human power to help him stop drinking. He's admitting his problems. He's asking for help. He's then talking about his wrongdoings, asking for God to help take them away, discussing with another person what he has done, and then the prayers and the steps after. I express my entire willingness to approach these individuals, which is your step 9, when you go and actually see people that you need to make an amends to, and rightly so. Never was to be critical of them. So it's again about finding in step 9, and when as we work our way through, and then obviously sort of on sort of step 10-ish, how no matter how, I think it says the word glaring, no matter how glaring their problems are or what they've done to us, it's fundamental that we keep the process of making the amends. This is now on a daily basis as well, that we don't criticize them or make it sound like that we're trying to appease them, but also make a muttering of something that they've done towards us, just to make it a little bit less powerful or directed. I see it on a daily basis. I think from doing the steps and the program and coming to such meetings as the Keystone Group, the more, this is a personal note now really, the more I understand and the more I grow within my understanding of my higher power, my God, and then I can work, I can practice my principles with the family. I find now, I didn't at first, but I find it so easy now, and it's part of my life, and it's the family's life, because no matter, as the alcoholic, if the people that are living in the house with me are they're going to be spiritually sick from the way I've been for the last 20 years. They're not just going to go overnight, just be really nice and think, oh, daddy's sober. I've got to have quite a spiritual experience to move across. So I've got time to work on that, as long as no one's getting harmed. The different thing that I find as a kicker during the day is working life, working with others, working with others that you know have absolutely no concept about the program, no concept about your alcoholism. They don't care. And daily and day out, they will try and be the way they are. And it's hard, the more you learn that you want to pass on a message of hope and understanding, that it's falling on deaf ears. And it really is a show of keeping, what's the phrase, faith without works is dead. It pushes you to the point where you find out so much more about my own spiritual powers, what I need to learn, what I need to understand. And then if I'm struggling on that day, by being able to reflect on that day with 11 and 12, whether it is a 12 as in like chatting with another alcoholic, but mainly with 11, it enables me to it may not be. Some nights I can get back and obviously chill, and then once you've done it, and then do my 11 at night time in bed, it can hit me straight away, and I realize what the problem is. But some days it might take me a week to try and understand that glitch, that little makeup of something that's not quite right. But it's fundamentally here, and it can be something from mainly from the big book style meetings that I really understand and what I get from that. So I told you, Danny, it would be a bit of a ramble. Yeah, right. Where was I now? So anyway, yeah, from that Bill's story, we have a fundamentally interesting information to run through. Now, why have I written page 52? Bear with. Again, see, that's the well, no, it's borderline. It's the way it works. Again, with the printing, I suppose, but if it's part of We Agnostics, and I think it's fundamental to understand that. Again, like I said at the beginning, there is points to this, and there's progression to my ramblings today, but what I was saying about the cornerstone and foundation of your 1, 2, and 3, and how when you're reading information through the book and then taking your steps and working and not working the program, working the program, that there's elements as you read through again. It usually takes a few reads, as it does for me anyway, because that's where I am. Cheers, T. That you see a relationship from what those foundation program steps are. Real bottom of page 52. It's in relation to how as human beings, if there's something really quite scarily new, we're not very good at adapting to it, or we don't understand it, or then also we are not going to want to understand it, or we blasphemize it and tell it it's the worst thing since sliced bread. I think I remember years and years back that even down to a train, I'm going to talk about the Wright brothers here, but in the very similar vein, that people wouldn't go on to trains in the UK back when they first came out, that they thought if you went over sort of 35 miles an hour, your skin was fall off because of the speed that you were traveling at. I mean, how would you, it's such a weird thing to understand, but it's the truth because it's such a scary new thing, something that we take for granted. If I went out on my motorbike today, which I did, to blast the cobwebs away, if I went past somebody in the Victorian days on that motorcycle, one, I probably wouldn't have any teeth because the roads were so bad, but the fact of the matter is I would have, it's just a huge shock. It would have been something that's out of space almost to them. The Wright brothers, bottom page 52, the Wright brothers, almost childish faith that they could build a machine which would fly was the mainspring of their accomplishment. Without that, nothing could have happened. We agnostics and atheists were sticking to the idea that self-sufficiency would solve our problems. When others showed us that God sufficiency worked with them, we began to feel like those who had insisted the Wright brothers would never fly. So it's a very short but random. I haven't got a ticker machine on me to say how many times I say the word ramble or random today, but I'll let you have that one. If you're struggling to understand, right, I hope he doesn't, well, in the absence of the yellow card, but you'll know who I'm talking about if he's listening. after this session. But I understand. I very much hope I don't actually find out, but I understand with people within friends within AA who had a longer sobriety periods of time than me, longer information retaining data. I'm not very good at retaining the information. I think it's from my alcoholic drinking. I'm very good at picking things up once I see a couple of words, but I can't go back a bit like some of the other guys in the rooms. Oh, paragraph 3 on page 52, or oh, the first sentence on page 27. It goes past me on that, and I struggle, and I had to have a bit of resentment with that when I was very early on. Cool. Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm reading chat at the same time. That they've relapsed. They've out of the blue have been in a state of absolute drunkenness that's quite scary, and they're lucky, very, very lucky, and I'm humbled that they are back in the rooms. But one of them, and again, I hope you don't mind, he was the first one who took me through the steps correctly via Zoom, and he understood the concepts. He understood exactly what he was telling me, but failed to actually take that on information in himself. It's not the content of knowing how much you know. It's fundamentally down to taking on those first couple of steps correctly in terms of not necessarily words. It's coming to believe that a power greater than yourself, all these things are taking on there. Decision to turn our will and our lives over, made us searching, fearless moral inventory. Then we're back admitting to God. 6, we're entirely ready to have God. Humbly ask him. All of this stuff is really fundamental to my growth within what I'm doing. Now, if I'm not getting those first 3, if I'm just, I hate the phrase, but I'm going to use it's very, what's the word? Non-AA, fake it till you make it. I've had that quite a few times. Sponsees doing exactly the same. Now, this is the kicker as well. This is the malady. I will jump on that today because that is fundamentally the killer in me. I don't have one day at a time. That's not in the book anywhere. And I fundamentally also not very good at taking it when people say that. I don't have one day at a time. I have a daily reprieve, yes, contingent on my spiritual side of things. But I can think ahead, can't I? I'm not going to just think of today. I can't. I've got kids. I've got family. I'm trying to run a business. I don't think, right, I'm only going to make it through the day. I can't afford to in this life if I'm going to progress spiritually. Now, going back to my sponsor who drank again, that literally a week and a half before that, I had a message saying that one of the people that we had tried to help was found dead from alcohol, choked in his sleep. That did not in any shape or form stop that person from going out drinking. He didn't even know that that's what was going to happen. And this is from somebody who could probably read what's it, the whole big book word for word for you. Someone who I thought I really aspired to in the context of that. But it shows to me that unless I get these steps very early on, there's limit to what I could probably blunder my way through a few months, but I'm not going to last very much longer, because I'm still in control. As much as I think that I potentially am in that person's zone, then it's I'm not going to be around that much longer sober. So right. I'm trying not to make it a Danalogue, but I'm trying to sort of show how the interpretation of what I understand is the correct process within the program. And I only ever relate to it into terms of words that I've read from the pages that I'm reading from. It's you can't do a bad thing by understanding the malady side. If, again, I wasn't necessarily told this, but it really did resonate with me, because it enabled me when I was very early on, before I'd done step 3. I didn't realize that actually I was using the words thy will during the day, because I understood nothing about anything past step 3, but I was already doing step 10 because I was wanting to progress, and I was being held back by the people that were supposed to be helping me. But I knew that I had to rely on something else, not human power. And that, I pray, is what's made me last as long as I did before I understood the concept of what we were doing and what the program was about. If you're in a zone that you're capable of understanding about the malady, depending on the person that you're speaking to and the person that's coming, that you're trying to help, if I thought that they are mentally stable enough to actually understand the two fold problem that we suffer from as alcoholics. Okay, we've got the alcoholic problem, the allergy. When we drink, we can't stop because we constantly want more. Now, if I was then to put into context, which is such an important thing, to talk about the malady would help. It helped me understand my second part of step 1, the unmanageability. I hadn't realized how much of my information during the day was being controlled by my illness, my obsession to drink, my self-centeredness, my resentments, my fears. And on page 23, again, this bottom paragraph, once in a while he may tell the truth, and the truth, strange to say, is usually that he has no more idea that he took the first drink than you have. Some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time. And it goes on. When I very first done this is very early on within step 1, I got from that, I saw how the unmanageability side was working within my head, because that's okay, right, fine, I understand, hands up, I can't drink, right, I get that, but what's going on up here? So then if you explain the concept of what's going up in the head as well, I mean, this is by having to be almost self-taught at one point to understand this, that it's you realizing what the main problem is. Because alcohol, if you were able to sort of say to yourself, and you didn't have a problem with the the malady, the illness, the obsession, you could just say to yourself, right, I'm not going to have a drink then. Cool, I'll stay off the drink. Catch you later, guys. I'm going to go and grab a coffee. Then there wouldn't be a program, and there wouldn't be a need to a program. But what else are we supposed to do? So unless we get this in check and actually understand it, then there's no way of you actually getting past the first step, because if you're not admitting that your lives are unmanageable and you can't understand it, what a great way of trying to understand it, by explaining this section. It's only a 20 on page 23, but it gives you enough more information for the curious person to understand that if they go out there again in a mentally unfit state, that it's going to happen, and then they come back going, whoa, what the hell happened there? So yeah, we're coming up to 1:45 on the hour, and considering I didn't actually prep anything, I will kindly leave it there for you. I really genuinely do hope that somebody got something from this, and if there is any questions, I will be more than happy